Scary stories to tell if you dare. Collected folklore retold by Joe Oliveto. The New Wife. Once, there was a man who fell in love with a pretty young girl who moved into town. He wanted to marry her, but he couldn't. He already had a wife of his own. The man couldn't forget about the pretty girl, though. They would go on long walks together when his wife thought he was staying late at work. Ultimately, he decided he would poison his wife. With her dead, he could marry his new love. The man cooked a big dinner one night. He pretended it was a special gift for his wife. She didn't know he had poisoned her drink. Soon after taking a sip, she began to choke. The man watched her, doing nothing to help. As she took her last breath, his wife looked at him with a face of pure anger. Just before she died, she realized what her husband had done. The man hid the body in the woods and told everyone his wife was missing. After a long time, everyone assumed she had died, and he was free to marry his new bride. But everywhere the man went, he thought he saw his old wife. Sometimes he would spot her on a crowded street, staring at him with the same face she made when she died. Sometimes he'd look in the mirror and see her standing behind him. But when he would turn around, no one was there. Every night he had nightmares about her. None of that worried him, though. He told himself he was just imagining things. Nothing was going to stop him from marrying the pretty girl. The day of his wedding finally arrived. His bride had chosen the most beautiful dress he had ever seen. When the wedding ceremony was complete, the man lifted his bride's veil to kiss her. The woman he saw wasn't the pretty young wife. Instead, he saw the angry face of his old wife. In shock, he grabbed her by the throat and tried to strangle her. Before he could kill her once more, people in the crowd pulled him away. They helped the bride to her feet. Suddenly, she didn't look like his old wife anymore. Now, she was the pretty young girl yet again. But everyone had seen the man try to kill her, and he spent the rest of his life in prison. The Backseat. Jenny and Eddie had just gotten married. They didn't have a lot of money, but they needed a car. One day, when they were out shopping, they found exactly the one they wanted. It was an old classic, just the kind they liked. A car like that should have cost a lot more than they could afford. But when they asked the man who owned the shop how much it cost, the price was much lower than they expected. "We'll buy it," Jenny said. "Okay," the shop owner replied. "But everyone who buys the car always seems to bring it back." Jenny and Eddie couldn't imagine why anyone would bring back such a perfect car. They didn't think much about it. They were just happy they found their dream car at such a great price. For the first few weeks, Jenny and Eddie used it to go on long drives all across the state. Even when they had nowhere they needed to go, they just liked driving it. But when either one of them drove it alone, it was very different. Both noticed a weird smell anytime they drove it alone. "It's an old car," Eddie said. "Sometimes old cars smell funny." They tried not to let it bother them, but things got worse. Soon, Jenny started to feel like there was someone watching her from the back seat when she was driving. When she turned around, however, there was never anyone there. Then one day, she got that feeling and looked in the rearview mirror. Looking back at her, she saw two mean, ugly eyes. They looked like the eyes of a killer. She quickly looked back, but again there was no one there. Jenny and Eddie decided they had enough. They brought the car back to the shop and told the dealer what had happened. That's when he told them the truth. "There's a reason people keep bringing this car back," he said. "It used to belong to a famous gangster. Someone shot him in it years ago. Now everyone says it's haunted. The Dare. Kevin and Tony were friends. There was an old mansion on their street that no one lived in anymore. Everyone said it was supposedly haunted. Some of the older kids even said they had seen a ghost of an old woman sitting in a rocking chair by the attic window once. One day, Kevin dared Tony to break into it. Tony reluctantly didn't even want to. His parents had told him not to go near that house, but he knew Kevin would make fun of him if he didn't. "Go up to the attic when you get inside," Kevin said. "Don't just wait by the front door." "Okay," Tony replied. "Take a picture when you get up there to prove it." And Tony said he would. It was easy to break into the house. The front door was unlocked. Kevin stood behind and watched Tony go inside. 15 minutes passed, then a half hour, then an hour. Kevin walked up to the house and shouted for Tony, but he didn't get an answer. He was too afraid to go inside and check for Tony. Instead, he went home and told his parents what happened. They called the police. An officer searched the old house and found Tony in the attic. He was dead. The doctor couldn't figure out how he died. The only clue they had was a picture Tony took in the attic. There was an old woman in the picture, sitting in a rocking chair by a window.